Good morning, good afternoon, Dan. I guess it is just about afternoon in New Jersey. How are things with
It is.
you?
Good, Bill. Cold, about as cold as we've seen in, man, I can't even tell you how long. I went outside to start the car that would start this morning, and it read 2, but I think it was lying. It was probably a little bit cooler than that. So, uh,
Yeah.
brisk for those of us getting out for some miles this morning, I suppose.
Yeah, well, we were very happy to get rid of that finally because we were below zero every night for several nights. And yesterday was the first day we got above freezing here. And it's actually not supposed to get above freezing today, but my folks down in Savannah, Georgia, I'm pretty sure their entire city is shut down because they're getting like 2 inches of snow. And I love all those stories. And I heard New Orleans got like 8 inches or
They
something. So,
did. They
yeah.
did. I I lived in South Carolina for quite some time, dozen years, maybe something like that. More the northwest side, so closer to Western North Carolina. Um, we would get snow there from time to time. Ice is more of a big issue there, or a bigger issue there. But every time we would get snow, it's incredible how just based on the lack of infrastructure, and I get it by the way, like everything just comes to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
Everything comes to a screeching halt.
Well,
Uh,
when my folks have lived in Savannah for 30 years, they said they've had snow one other time in the time they've been there. They got a quarter of an inch and the schools shut down for a
yeah,
week,
yeah.
the entire week. So I thought maybe we should send our snow plows down to the south. They could probably use them. Although I'm trying to picture snow plows with Confederate flags hanging off the back of them.
Stars and bars forever.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, sorry you're freezing, but all good things shall pass.
Yeah, we're doing well. We're doing well.
Yeah. So, hey, love having you on here. It seemed like the new year was the time because people were always looking at making changes. In my case, I'm kind of cooped up because I'm waiting to have a couple surgeries, and so it seems like a good time to get some other projects going, which I'm working on. But everybody probably is looking at kind of new things, new movement in their life. And you're the perfect guy for that because you're the guy who's out there helping people set goals, keep goals. More importantly, I think we've already passed the date at which they say that people have already blown their resolutions, right?
Yeah, yeah. National Quit Day, I think they call it.
Oh, I'm glad it has an official moniker now. Yeah,
Terrible. That's
yeah.
absolutely awful.
Well, in this
Absolutely awful.
country, it'll probably be an actual federal holiday one of these days, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, I know when I go to the gym right now, it's just absolutely packed. I mean, it's just insane. And on one hand, I'm very happy to see people out there, doing something positive for themselves, hopefully. On the other hand, you're like cursing, like, I can't get on that machine, I can't use that. I call them resolutionists, and
Yeah.
I always say, hey, we just have to endure a month or two and they'll be gone. I'm always happier though that seems like every year they hang on a little bit longer, a little bit longer. So maybe people are sticking with it.
I don't have problems with resolutions in general. The gym space that I lease here where I run my business, there are a couple of other coaches and trainers that also co-lease that space. And of course, there we have a handful of whiteboards. And one of them a couple of weeks ago asked the annual question, what is your New Year's resolution? And there were no responses yet, but I had to chime in because I can't help myself. And so my response was my resolution is to have no resolutions, but rather to create habits that I can execute daily for hopefully the rest of my life. Um, and I think that's really a better approach. I have no problem I mean, resolutions are basically goals, right? I'm not going
Yeah.
to go check Merriam-Webster right now, but I think we're pretty close. Having goals is fantastic, but having goals without a step-by-step plan on how to get there is like plugging in a destination without turn-by-turn directions. You may wind
Yeah.
up somewhere close, but you're really not going to have much of an idea as to how to get there. And so there's no problem necessarily looking at the bigger overarching bigger goal, but what we need are those consistent habits on a daily basis that help us to get there. And that's been my mission, effectively since I got started, but it's something I've really been refining over the last few years is to not just help improve goal setting, but also, as I like to say, goal getting, because, we talk about National Quit Day. We want to try to avoid that as much as we can. You know,
Yeah,
we
of
we
course.
we want to try to stack wins as best we can for ourselves. And how do we do that? We put ourselves in the best position possible every day, from the moment we wake up until the time we go to bed. We want to put ourselves in the best position possible to stack as many wins as possible, no matter how seemingly insignificant, right? But the fact of the matter is, that's what we need.
Yeah.
That's what we
No, I
need.
think it's also just important to be able to rebound from the times we do get knocked off of that structure we've created. And, we talked off air about I've really been struggling with sleep lately because of
Yeah.
a cat I have in the house who he's old and blind and deaf, and he just meows, wakes me up at all hours of the night. And so I don't find myself waking up as early as I used to because, or sometimes he wakes me up too early and I can't go back, whatever, and I feel like crap. But nevertheless, like I've got a couple projects to work on this year, and I have a schedule right over my desk over here, and
Mhm.
I actually have it's kind of like a school schedule where it's,
Mhm.
from certain hours I'm going to be working on this, certain hours I'm going to be working on this, and I've kept that, tried to keep that as a structure that I can follow. Yet
Yeah.
I get knocked off of it every now and then because I get started later in the day because I haven't slept or whatever. And to me, the biggest thing is not to say, okay, well, National Quit Day just kicked in because it didn't happen, and so to be able to say, okay, Monday didn't work out, okay, for whatever reason, and but I'm going to stick with it on Tuesday, So I
Yeah.
think that's almost just as important.
There's no question, and I think we need to remember. There are memes out there in the interwebs that talk about this. What we think progress looks like is this straight upward arrow trend, right? But what progress really looks like is very twisty and very turny. Two steps forward, one step back, one step forward, two steps back. It does take time. And if we are a little bit more successful than we are not, we're still going to make progress. Slow and steady progress is still progress.
Right.
And I think that's the part that gets missed. So if your resolution, air quotes used on purpose, is I'm going to work out every day, and then you wind up doing something, you move with purpose 4 days a week. Well, that's 4 days more than you were doing before, and it's more than half the week. So while it doesn't have to be all or nothing,
Right.
there can be that middle ground, and I think that sort of approach still gives you something to build on. You can celebrate your successes, but still build on that and try to progress yourself further.
Yeah, and that really ties into a core coaching philosophy I have. Working with adults as I do now, it's not like working with kids where, the kids were required to be at practice every day, basically. Whereas adults, you have to work around their lives.
Mhm.
And, things are going to knock them off all the time. Family, jobs, what have you, as we all know. So obviously, keeping them doing something positive and to realize that every single day they're doing something is better than what they had they not been doing anything. And
Yeah,
yeah, and always working towards that goal. And again, it's not going to be smooth. There are going to be days when, hey, you know what, you just can't do it, and nobody gets berated for that.
I think you touched on an interesting point there, and obviously, as you're talking about student athletes, that's bit more of a loaded question for us mere mortal adults. Even masters athletes, the question is how much is enough,
Hmm.
and then what is that minimal effective dose, so I can continue to be productive, but yet keep myself away from injury and burnout and fatigue and increased cortisol and all these other things. What is that minimal effective dose? And what is that next goal that's right ahead of me that can keep me motivated to go forward? Not the bigger overarching thing, but this one right here, right in front of me. Like when we're out on the roads, we're not looking all the way out a mile down the road, and we're not looking straight down at our feet. We're looking, what, 15, 20 feet ahead and
Yep.
down, so we can kind of see
Mid-range.
what's
Yep.
coming. Right,
Yeah.
sure. I think that's a good analogy for life. We want to make sure that we're keeping a little bit of an eye on the prize. We're not completely stuck. We're not completely stuck in this moment, which kind of goes against everything I believe. Um, but we do want to make sure that what we are doing is consistent, that it's approachable, it's repeatable, it's sustainable, and it nudges us closer to what we want to get.
Yeah, you know, that's you gave me a great visual analogy to think of just now. But if you're climbing up a mountain or Hope Pass, you know, that's something, you know, pretty relatable to those of us who are on Leadville. You got a huge incline you're going up. If you look at the top, it looks really daunting sometimes. And so, you know, even with the kids I've coached, you know, I said, hey, if you're running up a hill, look at the next tree, the fire hydrant, the mailbox, the crack in the sidewalk, whatever it is. You know, look at that, get to that point, give yourself a little pat on the back that you made it there, and then
Mm-hmm.
look at the next crack in the sidewalk, the next tree, whatever it is. Because if you look at the top, it can be awfully daunting. And if you don't feel like you're making progress, if you know, we've been out there, you know, you work for half an hour, you look up, it's like, damn, that goal isn't any closer than it was before. And same thing, if you are working on, say, losing 20 pounds and you work really hard and you lost 1 pound and you're going, wait, well, geez, this isn't getting me anywhere. Well, it is. That was progress for one thing. And secondly, it's like you have to realize it's not a smooth curve, like you say. It's you may
Mm-hmm.
lose a pound this week and you think, oh, that's not much, but then the next one you may lose 4 pounds, or you know, it's going to be variable all the time.
And we can get into the physiological side of, say, specifically as it relates to weight management, or even including movement into your lifestyle, how and why the body craves slower progress. Uh, First and foremost, it's less shocking to the body. What? Let me back up for a second. When we mentally approach bringing habits on, let's say movement and nutrition specifically, when we mentally approach it, it has to be in a way that what can I do right now in this moment that gets me 1% closer to that next thing. And it's whether it's drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning, making sure you're keeping up with your fruits and veggies, making sure your protein is up and or enough. Um, maybe kind of limiting packaged foods or processed foods as much as we can. Really, really basic things. But what things can I do right now, right this second? Not 6 months from now when it's over, because what's going to get me the greatest amount of success is doing this very simple thing. Like, again, having a glass of water first thing in the morning. Have a glass of water before you do anything. You get to check in with yourself before you check in with the rest of the world. And if you can do that in a repeated way every day, suddenly what was the foundation of your house suddenly elevates a little bit more. And so now you have this habit that you're already doing. Well, let's see if we can add something else to it. Can we, if we want to check in with ourselves, do we want to journal for a couple of minutes? Just kind
Hmm.
of write down whatever thoughts we have first thing in the morning. Do we want to, can we get, I mean, maybe not now, maybe not this time of year, maybe not here. Can we get outside for 5 or 10 minutes and get a few steps in?
Right.
Can we sit in silence and just see where we are and appreciate where we are in the moment? And so each thing that we add, seemingly insignificant in and of itself, when stacked on top of each other, gets us that much closer. So we never have to worry about bringing our goal. And for those not watching but listening, I'm actually pointing to the ceiling.
Mhm.
We never have to bring the goal down to us, but our floor continues to rise up. So it is easier for us to reach it. Right. But I think patience and buy-in are probably the two biggest obstacles, because we want what we want and we want it now. And as much as I hate sports analogies, you know, there's one from the baseball world that really sort of fits, and you can swing for homers all the time. But in this regard, especially as it relates to behavior change and habit formation, singles and getting on base and working yourself around, that does the job.
Yeah.
And
No,
and, and
I
it's
like it.
and it's
Yeah.
far more sustainable.
Yep. You know, patience was actually the takeaway from the Sober Fucking Christmas episode that Gary Stotler and Chad Pritchett and I did. that all progress requires patience, which is a
Hmm.
tougher and tougher thing. I mean, it's tough for me.
Hmm.
I once actually took a personality test, and they handed it back and said, "We've never seen anything like this before. You got a 0 on patience." I mean, I was the absolute worst scorer ever, and I don't think I'm as bad as some people who are, just the instant gratification culture that we live in. Everybody wants to lose weight by taking a pill, or they want to get big by taking a supplement, or whatever it is. And patience, slow, steady progress is, it's kind of like the old adage, like, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time,
One bite at a time. That's it.
Yeah.
And a big thing that I ask of prospective and new clients as they're coming on is that they agree to be self-aware, just with an open dialogue of what they feel, what they experience, what works, what doesn't, to be aware. We implement stimulus. We look at how our bodies react to it. We look at how we react to it mentally. Does it fit? Does it not? What works? What doesn't? How do we feel about it all? But we have to understand too, there is a very experimental side of all of this. And again, this is any habits, whether it's nutrition, movement, sleep, recovery, or mindfulness, whatever it is. All of it requires you to be an active part in your own experiment. And I actually had to pull it up because I often misquote it, but one of my favorite lines in all of literature was Charles Dickens from David Copperfield. Whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life or whether that station will be held by anybody else, these pages must show. That is my expectation for anyone, is that you have that level of awareness of what helps fulfill you. You're willing to set aside what does not work for you, but every day, what can I do right now, today, here, a little bit better, 1% better, 2% better, and just nudge it forward, because there is no tape to cross, right? There is no finish line here on this. There's only
Right.
one finish line, right?
Right.
And there's a box at the end of it, and then underground we go. Um, but this is the most important race of all, and it's us living the most authentic and out loud human existence we possibly can.
Yeah. And I've learned a lot about awareness myself the last couple months. I'm glad you brought that up, Dan. I've been really unable to run the last couple months due to this foot issue that by the time this comes out, I'll have had surgery on probably. And but so I've been in the gym a lot. And what I've noticed is that when I was younger, I would get in the gym, and obviously, every couple of weeks I'm adding more weight, more reps, I'm making
Mhm,
progress all the time.
mhm, mhm,
But we all know that, beyond our 20s, we start to decline basically. And yeah, it's inevitable. And
mhm,
what I've noticed in my case is that if I'm just holding on to what I have, I'm doing pretty good. Now, there's some things where I'm getting better at. There was a
mhm.
time when I was younger, and when I say younger, maybe only about 10 years ago, I could bang out 20 dips like nothing. It was just
Sure.
one of those things I could just do forever. I would get in
Mhm,
the gym with the kids I coached, and these little scrawny boys with their twig arms, and I would make it a goal for them by the end of the season to do 2 dips. It was terrible. I mean, and I'd get kids go, Coach, if I do 28th of a dips, does that count the same? I mean, but no, I would just bang out 20 dips just like that. But now I can't do them anymore. But I am, or 20, I should say. But I'm working my way back up there.
mhm.
I'm getting better and better. But a lot of other things I'm noticing, no matter what I do, I'm not getting that much better. But I'm not losing. And so,
And that's the important part. Someone very, very smart that I respect a great deal has said on numerous occasions, you can continue to develop. When I say strength, I mean like functional strength, like
yeah,
lifting the car off of someone or something like that. Pure functional strength will continue to improve until your mid 50s, or can
right.
continue to improve up until your mid 50s. From that point, and again, science backs this up. And I don't know how geeky you want to get, so please pull me back off the ledge anytime,
All right.
anytime we go too technical here. But um, for those of us, not quite there yet, for those of us 55 and over, focusing more on hypertrophy or muscle growth is probably the best thing. So you had said, you had talked about getting strong and doing all these things and not continuing to make gains. We can, it just looks different.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing we need to remember is that we want to, once we get into our mid 50s, we want to maintain as much muscle mass as we can. So it then turns back to the old set and rep ranges that we learned, decades ago from the great Dr. Thomas DeLorme, who was the guy who basically came up with the idea of 3 sets of 8, 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of
Right.
12. Rep ranges like that to maintain that muscle mass. Obviously, we need to keep our protein up. We need to stay hydrated. We need to do all these things. Not to say that we're going to get super huge and jacked as we're in our 60s, but rather to keep the lean muscle mass that we have, because sarcopenia is such a big deal.
Yeah.
The loss of muscle mass as we get older, I forget the exact percentage year over year. But to say,
I've heard the stories that how you lose 1% a year,
that
whether it's
sounds
muscle
about
mass,
right.
yeah, or even with your aerobic capacity. But again, who knows? That's just a generalization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree. But there is still room to certainly maintain what you have. I forget where I read it, but someone had said that his goal as he was into his 60s and 70s was to be as strong as an untrained 20-year-old, which is interesting.
Right.
So, like, that's not bad. Um,
I've been told
I don't,
that that sometimes my VO2 max is the same as an untrained 20-year-old. So I don't know.
I don't necessarily think that that's an insult. Maybe,
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But I do think, and I think that's a good thing to touch on too. Is just, we talk about goals, we talk about SMART goals, right?
Right.
We want to make sure that they're measurable, that they're appropriate for us. Um, to make sure that the goals that we do set, the bigger, more overarching things, really do fit where we are, that they're reasonable to a point. Um, because it's okay to have a series of goals, short term, midterm, long term, longer term. But we need to keep something right at the forefront that keeps us engaged on a daily basis. Because if all we're thinking about is that bigger thing, you had mentioned losing 20 pounds in a perfect world, somewhere between 5 and 6 months, maybe a little bit less. Like
Yeah.
if you want to do it slowly and appropriately, and we're adding lean muscle and we're getting our endurance up and all these things. But you need to have something on a daily basis, while the scale may not necessarily show that progress, that keeps you engaged.
Right.
It can be anything. It could be, based on checking off habits or keeping up step count or, whatever it is. But again, I'm going to continue to say, like, this present moment thing, what can I do right now to help me get that little bit closer towards that bigger thing, no matter what it is?
Yeah. Well, and how many people who have a goal of losing 20 pounds think, oh, I'm going to do it over 6 months? They're
They
all
don't.
looking at, yeah, they're looking at 2 or 3 months. That's our mindset right now.
Well, we have the beauty of hindsight now, and I'm not going to sit here and poo-poo anyone because I don't want to get sued. But there was a television show a couple of decades ago that preyed on people who wanted to lose vast amounts of weight, and I won't even say body fat, but wanted to lose vast amounts of weight in a very short period of time. And this show was very profitable
Oh, yeah.
and made several people very famous and made them a lot of money, and left a trail of destruction and misery behind them because of that very notion, where you had people who were well over 3, 4, maybe even 500 pounds who were trying to lose as much as they possibly could as quickly as possible. Set aside so like the world, the earth is round. Okay. Set aside physiology for a second, just for a second, because that's just not how this stuff works. But also, mentally, there's no conceivable way that is sustainable.
Right.
And you could say, all this weight was not gained overnight, so you're not going to lose it overnight. But just purely from a physiological standpoint, it is better to create those habits that you know you can latch onto, that are not exhausting or frustrating, maybe a touch of a challenge, but not out of reach.
Right.
Mentally, it's a win. And if you continually do it, it's that compounding win.
I don't remember what the prize was on that show, but maybe they thought, hey, that $1 million or whatever it was will then earn me, buy me whatever I need to do to keep
Oh,
that weight
God.
off.
And the
Uh,
success rate on that particular show, that shall remain nameless, um, I think was okay at the start in terms of success that they got right at the end. And fact check me on this, anyone who's listening, but there are articles that are circulating as far as where are they now type thing. It's not great. And I think the resounding messaging from the people who participated, from the actual contestants themselves, was we were tasked with doing this. And again, I'm paraphrasing. We knew this wasn't sustainable, but the carrot was being dangled.
yeah.
And so therefore, you know, poor pretenses all the way around. The only reason we need to look at habit change is, number one, if it gets us a little bit closer towards something bigger that we're aiming for. And two, like I keep saying over and over again, if we can do it consistently or relatively consistently. If you can do something more often than not, it's probably a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I have not thought about that TV show in a long, long time. And I wonder if these issues we talked about are the reason why it doesn't exist anymore or hasn't been rebooted or whatever. But thank God it's gone. You're right.
Well, the interesting thing is better life through pharmacology, right? So I feel
Mm,
too with some of the new medication that is out there, GLP-1s. And again, I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not going to poo-poo. Again, because I
bariatric surgeries. Yeah.
bariatric surgeries,
Yeah.
which have been have been around for quite some time, with some success, some not. I don't know that we'll ever see another television program like that again for that very reason. I also think, knowing what we know now, it's I don't know that the interest would be there. And here's the thing, too. I mean, we are, as a country, becoming more and more obese by percentage year over year. So I don't necessarily know that the broader message, I don't know that that sells. You know,
Yeah.
and we could slide down this rabbit hole too. I don't necessarily know that that's where we wanted to go today, but the larger message is we could stand to be a little bit more proactive as it relates to our healthcare, to make preventative medicine far more accessible than reactive medicine.
Yep. Well, that is a very large topic we can talk
Yeah, for
about,
sure.
but yeah,
Yeah.
no, but yeah, you're right. It's whether the message got lost, whether it's been, people realize so much that the message was bad or,
Mhm.
whatever. But yeah, we need to build more consistent habits. And, you were just
Mhm.
touching on that a couple minutes ago, Dan. How can people build in that consistency to be able to stick to those goals and kind of what I touched on earlier as well is what happens if you do get knocked off the tracks? How do you get re-railed? So I made that word to be opposite of derailed.
To me, I think it's making whatever habit, whatever singular habit that is, as approachable as you can. Whether it's your goal is to get out and run X number of days a week, we'll use that as an example. Set yourself up for as much success as possible. Whether it's multiple alarms in the morning if you're going out early, set your gear out right by the foot of your bed. So literally, when you get out of bed, you trip over it. Remove any and all obstacles that you can that can provide resistance.
Right.
So that again, if your goal is to get up and get out the door first thing in the morning, run, walk, whatever it is, there's no barrier to entry, or as little as possible. Resist checking your phone. This is that opportunity to check in with yourself before you check in with the rest of the world.
Right.
So, and each we have the opportunity to sort of pare down on an individual basis. Okay, what's that goal? How can we sort of deconstruct it to remove those barriers? So you're literally left with the act in its most pure form. We had spoken before about, say, getting up and having a glass of water first thing in the morning versus, say, pounding a cup of coffee or whatever else. I'm not against coffee, but a glass of water first might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
And so, again, how do we make that accessible? I have a couple of clients now who literally the night before take a glass of water, put it on their nightstand. So as soon as they wake up first thing in the morning, it's right there. There's no thought to it.
Yeah.
It removes all um, all barrier to it, all thought to the act of, okay, here's the thing I want to do. Here it is right in front of me. Let's go for it. I had a client, I have a client who, and when she hears this, she'll get a chuckle. She had a goal last year of doing one plank. Well, check that. She had a goal last year of doing 366 planks a year, 1 minute planks.
Okay.
On the elbows, forearm planks. Was very successful in terms of total number. Okay. Did not get all 366, but was very successful in terms of getting a large number of them. What we found as we drilled down towards the end of the year is that she took that habit and tied it with another habit that she was trying to adopt, which is basically standing up off the floor without using your hands. That's probably not something I'm going to attempt, but excuse me. So we talked through it a little bit, and while she was really successful, one of the things we discussed and I offered to her was taking something we want to achieve, take that habit that we're trying to form, and tie it to something that you're already doing. That's your anchor.
Yeah.
So, say for instance, for those of us who still make drip coffee, or if it's a like the pod based, we don't
Yeah.
mention brands here. They have a little pod based thing or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
So while you're making your coffee, or you have water on for tea, or whatever it is, while you're doing that, that is your opportunity. That's your space. Perform that habit in that space. You're probably not doing anything else aside from scrolling on the phone or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So tie that habit that you want to develop with something you're already doing on a regular basis. And that is your anchor point. That gives you a far higher chance of success. That to me is right at the top of the list of developing those habits. Sometimes they can stand alone on their own. Again, if it is approachable and repeatable enough. But I think taking it and combining it with something that's already familiar can make it less daunting, and also doesn't seem like it's going to be such a draw on time, or I gotta do this thing, or mentally it's a little bit lighter of a lift. So that to me would probably be the biggest thing.
Okay. So if, say, making a cup of coffee, it becomes your catalyst to go out for a run. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
is that valid? That a good example of what you're talking about there? That just it catalyzes the goal that you're trying to work toward.
So that's an interesting point. I like where you're going here. For those of us who drink coffee before they go out for their run or before they go out for their walk, if you were to say, my goal is to get out and we'll just say get steps in for the sake of this discussion in the morning. Okay. So once I do that, my coffee is here. Or once I make my coffee, that is my cue to get out the door.
Right.
Now, again, we want to talk about how that fits better. We want to make sure that we use appropriate rewards, right? Coffee, not necessarily a food thing. We want to make sure that we're not depriving or anything like I'm just sliding down rabbit holes here. So long as it works in a supportive way, I'm down with that. I love that. If I'm going to make a cup of coffee, then this, or
Right.
I do this and then I get that. I think that's a good way to go. Again, so long as it's productive, and not self-destructive.
Yeah. One thing I've done is There are a lot of times I'm not going to be shy about saying this. Sometimes I don't want to go out and run. You
Sure.
know,
Mhm.
I'm tired, the weather's crappy, whatever it is. But and my motto's always been I've never come back from a run and said, "Damn, I wish I hadn't done that." But nevertheless, one of the cues I use is getting my gear out or putting my clothes on for, whether it's running, going to the gym, whatever it is, because
Yeah.
to me, that shows I've made the commitment. So if I
Yeah.
change into my running clothes, there's no way I'm making a U-turn and saying, forget it, I'm not going out, So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, and you can always tell yourself again if it's going out and getting steps in, walking, running, going to the gym. You can always tell yourself, "I'm going to give myself 5 minutes." If something feels off, and I mean in a legitimate way, like we have to have real conversations with ourselves. Does something feel off? Does something hurt? Am I just not feeling it today?
right.
Okay, fine, but give yourself 5 minutes. If after that 5 minutes you can honestly look yourself in the mirror or through your mind's eye and say, "This is not my day," fine, go pack it in. But more often than not, that's not going to be the case, and
Right.
you're going to go do the thing. And that's that's something else that's important to consider too. God, I wish I could remember who taught me all these things. But if you take 10 movement sessions, 10 workouts, doesn't matter what they are, lifting, walking, running, cycling, swimming, doesn't really matter. You take 10 of them, five are going to feel probably pretty average. Three are probably going to feel pretty crappy, potentially. And then two may feel amazing.
Hmm.
So all of those things can be true, but they're never all going to be the same. And we may have expectations
Yeah.
of what it's going to look like based on how we slept, how we feel, what our device tells us. Oh, I slept
Right.
great. So therefore, or, I had a sleep score of like 20. So I've got nothing in the tank. That's nonsense.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, we never really know how these things are going to go, but it's putting in any sincere any modicum of sincere effort. Now, I've said this for years. There are no mistakes. There are no mistakes. There is no failure through genuine effort.
Yeah, and sometimes there is a overabundance of data.
Hmm.
And yeah, I like what you said there, Dan, that you could be flooded with this information that says, "Oh, today's going to be a crappy day,"
Hmm.
whether it's performance or whatever,
Hmm.
and you could buy into that. And that's one of the
Hmm.
things I absolutely refuse to do. It's just like one of the things I've always hated about some people is bitching about Mondays. It's like, why the hell does Monday have to be a bad day all the time? But some people have that
Hmm.
attitude that because it's Monday, it's going to suck. And you know what? It's one of 7 days you have. Why create this expectation that it's going to stink just because it begins with an M?
It's an opportunity to make progress.
Yeah.
It really is an opportunity to make progress. The data thing, I could go either way on it. Data is helpful, um, but it doesn't tell the full story.
Right.
We are not identified by numbers, I don't believe, aside from maybe age. But even then, I feel you can move yourself, you can nourish yourself, you can recover yourself in a way that has you outperforming your age.
Yeah.
Um, so metrics help to a point, but for me, and again, just speaking for myself, when I see numbers like say sleep score, for instance, I've been wearing a Garmin for years. When I see something like sleep score, I look at it and be like, okay, that's interesting. I
Right.
don't really give it much of a thought past that,
Right.
or strain score, or you know, um, HRV or VO2 max, or all
Yeah.
these other things. They're all interesting data points to a point. But again, depending on what your goals are they really going to tell the whole story? Probably not. The fact of the matter is, what we need to ask ourselves: did I nourish myself today in a way that suits me and nudges me towards my goals? Did I move in a meaningful way today? Did I check in with myself from a mental wellness perspective? If we can say we did those things in some capacity or another, then most days are going to be a win.
Yeah. Reminds me of sports fans can kind of relate to this, Dan, but analytics, of course, have become huge. in
Hmm.
sports. And
Hmm.
Aaron Boone, the manager of the Yankees, drives me nuts because everything he does, like a robot, is determined by the analytics. And
Hmm.
sometimes you have to sit there and say, yeah, the data here says I should probably leave this guy in the game, but
Hmm.
use the eye test for God's sake, Aaron Boone. Don't be damn robot. Look at this guy, and we fans all know, okay, this guy can't throw the ball over the plate. I don't care if the
Right.
odds say he should. He just, for whatever reason, right now, he's not throwing the ball over the plate. Get him the hell
Right.
out. You know?
Sometimes you just got to trust your eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, you were always going to get the Yankees reference in, weren't you? God damn.
Well, and usually about the Red Sox sucking too, but
Oh my God. All right. So, yeah, I think there's definitely utility in that. It's sometimes you just have to trust your eyes, and numbers are great, which is why specifically for me and what I do, using numbers as benchmarks, any kind of metrics as benchmarks for progress, it's a part of it, but it's not all of it.
right,
A good portion of it too is, well, how do you feel about that? Or um, I have a client right now that's done a phenomenal job coming back off of a significant lower body injury, surgery, all of that. Very consistent, has worked through a lot, and had mentioned that the scale had moved a little bit, but there were all these what we call in the business non-scale victories, where clothes were fitting better, and she's getting up off the floor easier, and she's getting up and down the steps easier. All these things, when you add them together, lead to so much and tell so much more of a story than um, say just the scale itself. So again, not to say that is not important to a degree, but again, metrics only tell a portion of a much greater story.
yeah, very true.
Mm-hmm.
Before you mentioned about having, some kind of catalyst, if you would, for a habit. Now, I think there are two kinds of people in the world. Some people for whom that they could have that visual cue, that, whatever it is, that spurs them to action every day. But I think there are a certain number of people, and I would include myself in there, that if I put that glass of water next to my bed every night, I would get up, I'd drink it, but there are a lot of days when it would become just so embedded in my daily vision that
Mm-hmm.
after a while I'd start ignoring it. It could be the sticky note on the mirror that people have to
Mm-hmm.
remind them to do something. And after a while, it just becomes so embedded in a commonplace that I could see where after a while you just ignore it. I think there are a lot of people who are like that. How do you break that barrier?
Yeah, I think finding something that works for you is important. Like we use the nightstand analogy, and I think there's utility in that. Again, there are a number of different ways to approach habit formation. You could certainly take something that you want to achieve, like we had mentioned, say going out and getting steps, for instance, and tie that with, say, coffee in the morning or tea in the
Right.
morning or whatever that is. Um, each individual person is going to respond differently to different constraints and different structure. What I would say is, there's always going to be a way to tie that down to something of value, whether it's water before phone, whether it's, water on the nightstand. There's always going to be something that you can use. And again, each person, by asking probing questions, to motivate each person, or what motivates each person, can really help distill what those things are that not so much motivate them, but say if say the water thing, if you tell me that you're on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being completely 100%, 1 being yeah, maybe not, you tell me that your compliance is probably going to be a 6 if you take that glass of water and you put it on the nightstand. Like,
Okay.
okay, Bill, what do you think we can do based on how you structure your life, how you set yourself up for sleep, how you wake up in the morning? Like, give me a picture of what we're dealing with. What do you think we can do to crank that up to a 7 or an 8? Again, I'm not looking for 9 or 10. If we
Yeah.
get there, that's awesome. But what can give us just a little bit more success there? And again, each person is going to be a little different as far as how their lives are structured, what sort of triggers for them. Um, Some people do better with intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. You know, outside motivation, like all the motivational stuff that's out there, there's tons of content. It works until it doesn't.
Right.
In the end, you have to find that thing within yourself that motivates you to be consistent, whether it's placement of a glass of water or the location of your gear to get outside, or however you want to manage your nutrition, whether it's, say, measuring and weighing things, which is certainly helpful, but not for everyone. Are we tracking through an app? Are we writing things down in a journal? Again, not all those things are for everyone, but it's finding the thing that is unique within you, because N equals one. We are all unique in terms of what makes us tick, but also what we define as success, not just in the short term, but also in the long term. So it's because of that the motivating factors for each and everything, I think, will be ever so slightly different.
Yeah,
so I know that's kind of a non-answer,
right.
but it really does sort of come down to the individual.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and there are obviously many ways to skin a cat. I've always been amazed at people who can organize their 100-mile races, the exact times to each aid station. And, like
Yeah.
this past Leadville, I actually tried to create a whole spreadsheet, exactly what I'm going to want at each aid station, what I'm going to pick up, drop off, et cetera, which that was a lot for me. I'm not used to doing that. I had a young woman on this podcast one time who she had never run a race further than 6K in her life, and yet she ran the Leadville 100. And and this was a 18-year-old, and she had things so organized that she succeeded. Not only finishing the race, but actually one of the like top 25 or so women in the race, which just blew me away. But it was because she was hyper organized. Or I think of Walt Handluser, who ran a 100-miler, 50 100-milers in a year. And he was a data analyst anyway, and he organized it so he knew exactly what all the races he was going to. He'd sectioned it off. In this time of year he was going to be in the Southeast, and in the summer he'd be in the Rockies, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the analysis that went into it was just absolutely incredible. And certainly those kind of people can organize their goals in a lot different ways than those of us. And like I say, I'm kind of the opposite. I mean, when I ran my youth sports business, by definition, I had to be a multitasker. I was setting up leagues and hiring people and dealing with venue owners. And all of a sudden a coach is calling up. He's got an issue. All of a sudden a parent's calling up and they're bitching about something. And I always had to be the person to quickly put out a fire here, fire there, whatever it took to get the job done. I would hire people to work around me who I called were the organizers, who would create the processes that we could all follow. I was the disorganizer, as I said, but and it worked very well for that kind of situation. Now that I am more of a freelancer, between my book editing, my coaching, et cetera, I find that the multitasking mode doesn't work well at all for me, and it just doesn't work. And so I've got to create this structure so that something like last year training for the Leadville 100, there were a lot of days when I could have done a lot of other things because I got a lot of irons in the fire at all times, but I had to keep looking at the big picture. The Leadville 100, that was a big deal for me. So some of the runs were going to be a lot of fun. I was going to go up to the mountains and go run trails. Great. Sometimes I was going to be doing the 5-mile loop around my neighborhood, which I've done so many times. It's not that exciting anymore. I still enjoy it, but I still always had to look at the bigger picture and say, yep, I'm going to get out the door and I'm going to do that 5-mile loop just because I got something bigger in mind. And if I don't do it, it's not going to progress me towards the goal.
Well, you brought up something that was interesting with the 18-year-old girl who ran Leadville. When I hear prepping all of that stuff in advance and being really detail oriented on, say, the nutrition, for instance, and this goes here and that goes there, what does that do? And the first thing that comes to mind is it frees mental bandwidth on the day of.
True.
It's one less thing for her to think about. Someone I respect in this industry basically wears the same black polo shirt and the same black pants every day. when I saw him at a seminar, he was asked why he does that. And he says, because what the hell did he say? Or how was he able to write a book within 6 months? He said, I was able to do that because I wear this every day, not this specifically,
Right, right.
because he doesn't have to put bandwidth into that. It frees up his space for other things. So I think there is a lot of utility in that. And again, that goes hand in hand with what we talked about before as it relates to setting yourself up for success. Just as an aside, I couldn't imagine going into a 100-miler without something resembling a plan. But that said, I would probably do that very thing. Like, it'll be all right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've ran Leadville many times without that focused of a plan. I mean, like I said, I created a spreadsheet this time just to see, hey, maybe this will help me because I've always just kind of gone in there and here's the ultimate irony. I created this whole spreadsheet and most of it was for my crew to have and everything, and I forgot it at home. I had to have somebody actually get on my computer and email me a version of a screenshot of this spreadsheet that I could share with everybody. So
Yeah, yeah. No,
that's me for you.
I do think it is important. And the reason why I bring that up, say the 18-year-old girl running
Yeah.
Leadville, to-do lists, for instance, I think are important because that relieves a lot of, especially if you assign your to-do list at night, for instance. So tomorrow, these are the things I want to get done, or at least the primary things I want to get done. When you lay your head down, those are things you can basically take off your plate. You don't carry that weight as you put your head down to the pillow.
True.
And when you get up, you got right there. You're ready to go. Okay, this, and this. And then also there's that reward by checking things off of that enormous sense of accomplishment, right? So I think there's a lot of utility in that. And again, not every person will respond to everything the exact same way, but it does come down to whether an individual is discovering that for themselves or they're working with someone in order to create those habits. What makes me tick, and then what helps nudge me towards that thing.
Yeah. No, I think to-do lists, checklists, whatever are huge. I've got this 19-year-old who lives at home with me. He's in the Army, home every weekend, which I still can't figure out how the Army works, that he's home every weekend. But nevertheless, he goes back down to his base or comes back every single time he's forgotten something that was important because he doesn't prepare, organize anything in advance. He literally just decides, hey, I'm leaving right now, throws everything in his backpack and runs out the door. And, this week was a perfect example. He's always going to the restaurants and bringing home a doggy bag and never eats it. And, we always have kind of a process of, hey, we're going to go into the refrigerator before you leave, and clean up whatever you said you were going to eat and didn't, you're taking it with you. And of course, this week again, it was the same thing. Nope. And you text me back in all capital letters, like, damn it, I forgot that. It's like, yeah, because all you did was you decided to spur of the moment, okay, I got to get back down there, ran down there and, forgets everything. And, again, if he had either a process, a checklist or something like that, this is what I need. I can't tell you how many times he would be calling up here and saying, hey, and he always used a military acronym. Did I leave that here? And I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. My hat. Oh, well, why didn't you just say your hat, for God's sake? But, but it's like, yeah, you left your hat. It's, again, he's always in such a hurry that he hasn't taken, like you say, it takes the mental aspect out of it. If you have just a checklist, it's there. You just go through it, say, okay, boom, I got it, done.
Well, you mentioned process. I'm a huge believer in that. When we say process, to me that means practice or developing a practice, and to me, practice creates habit, right? And it's the habits. Pardon me. It's the habits that get us towards that thing, whatever that is. But again, it may be a slower rate of progress, but slow and steady progress is still progress. I think we said that before, but
right.
Yeah, it's buying into buying into what you believe in. It's buying into those seemingly subtle but sustainable things that fulfill you and that help push you towards what you want. And understanding that there is, it's progress. It's not perfection.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, a lot of these processes, you could be, I'm thinking of a simple thing I've done is like nobody likes to pay a late fee on their credit card, right? I mean, it's just like
Right. Right.
wasted money right there. So
Hmm.
I actually have the due dates of the credit cards I have on my calendar.
Hmm.
So it's just a way to that visually I see, oh, that's right, this credit card payment is due, and
Right.
make sure it gets done because why do I want to pay $40 or whatever for a late charge?
Sure.
It's
No,
but
no, you don't
this
want
it's
to do
just
that.
yeah, no, it's a simple process. And so it's just a way for me to make sure that I stay on top of certain things. I mean,
And
you know,
finding that thing for you
right.
that you'll not likely be able to ignore, that elicits that response that you're looking for.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the bottom line to what we're talking about here is have something, some mechanism that will trigger
Hmm.
whatever positive behavior you want to
Hmm.
engage in.
Hmm.
Paying credit card bill may not sound positive, but it's avoiding a negative. But
Hmm.
whether it's to go out to work or work out, I mean, or going to I'm trying to think of another example, but you know what I'm talking about. Any other
Yeah.
positive behavior, just find whatever triggers you can and make it so that it's there all the time to keep triggering that positive behavior for you.
I agree. And in my space, in the strength and conditioning space, the personal training space, folks like us are a dime a dozen. But as I continue to dive deeper into this, I will say a bigger aspect is that behavioral change, that mental mindset. That's redundant. That mental approach, that mental approach to how we bring those changes about. It's not just as easy as here, do this, no matter what that is, but it's why am I doing this? And is it a fit for me? Which is why, and I say this all the time. I mean, I don't sell programs. I don't sell. Um, I haven't published a book yet because really all of this is catered to an individual, and it has to be. So when we're looking at trying to bring about true and lasting change, the important thing to one of the many important things to consider is this a fit for me?
Right.
It doesn't necessarily, just because it works for someone else does not mean in any capacity it'll be a fit for me. And if it doesn't work for you, that doesn't make you wrong or bad. You're not going to hell. But what is it about that doesn't work? And then what does it look like if we tried something else? And just again, being the hero of your own story, being that active part of your own experiment.
Yeah. No, I like that. So I think we've got a few really good takeaways from all this here. About setting those goals and having some patience to get there,
Hmm.
and then obviously making it a habit.
Yeah.
Changing
Yeah.
habit. So, how would you summarize all the things we've talked about here? I'm making you do
Goals
the
are,
work here.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. How do you summarize that? How much time do you have? Have your goals by all means. Resolutions are fine, I guess. But the fact of the matter is, resolutions are really goals. Once you set those goals, create a plan for yourself. And those plans are generally going to start with simple habits that you can start right now or today that are going to be, you can do them consistently. They're approachable, they're repeatable, they're sustainable. Um, be self-aware, be open and willing to making adjustments and changes as you need to. Um, Perfection is not the goal, right? Practice makes habit. You want to win more than you don't. So by making those habits a little bit more ground floor, boots on the ground, you're still making progress. You still have that mental win of being successful. And those things elevate you day over day, week over week, month over month, year over year, so that you can get closer and closer and closer to what it is you're trying to achieve. Every habit that you take on that is something that fulfills you and is productive for you affords you the ability to work to add something else
Yeah.
to get you that much closer. So, and just being patient. It's easy to say be patient, but finding those things that really resonate for you and understanding why we're doing this in the first place. What is your motivation? I don't want to. It's easy to say what is your why, but understanding what makes you tick as it relates to this specific thing. Why does it matter? And really embedding that into our decision making process and our belief system.
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, that's as good a summary as I could have asked for there. That was awesome, man.
I could have kept going. I got another hour in me, Bill.
Yeah, of course. I know we do. I'm going to add, just supplement what you said there and talk about the resilience I mentioned before about,
Mm-hmm.
when you
Mm-hmm.
do get knocked off course to
Mm-hmm.
be able to say, hey, that's fine. Let's get on to the next day. I've get clients who come tell me and say like, hey, you'd given me this particular hard workout to do and I missed it. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
fine, we just move on to the next day.
That's
It's
it.
just,
And
yeah,
and like I said before, I mean there are no mistakes. There is no failure through genuine effort. Again, things are going to happen. We're going to miss workouts. Meals may not necessarily go as planned. We may not get that full night's sleep. But the beauty of it is, this next moment is that opportunity to make a choice that can positively affect that change.
yeah,
And that's the thing. This moment right now, this one is the singular most important moment of the rest of your life.
yeah. No, and to use go back to an example we were talking about before that will resonate is like you missed that credit card payment.
Mhm.
Don't just go miss all the other credit card
Yeah,
payments
let's
after
not
that
do that.
because it accrues really badly
Yeah,
on you.
let's not do that. Let's
And
not
I
do that.
and I think that's a perfect analogy for what happens to you in life if you all of a sudden say, "Well, that's it. I missed that one day of eating healthy. I had my cheat day or whatever you want to call it. I hate that terminology, but now I'm just going to sit there and eat a pint of ice cream every single night.
Sure.
It's like,
Yeah, I mean, listen, we think about things falling off the rails like a snowball rolling downhill, and it just gets larger and larger and gains speed. But the fact of the matter is, success begets success. And
right,
so making that one decision right now, again, like I use the water thing quite a bit, but whether it's a glass of water, a piece of fruit, I don't care what it is, using that, then your next decision, your next decision, your next decision can gain that similar momentum. And so I think we need to remember that. Just because a choice may not have been the most aligned with what it is you're trying to accomplish, the next choice you make is the singular most important one, right? And if it's not that one, then it's the next one. And if it's not that one, then it's the next one. And if we are struggling to make those choices align with what it is we're trying to achieve, then we need to have that bigger conversation of, okay, like we said before, how can we increase that compliance? How can we increase your success rate?
right,
And again, whether that's a practice that an individual take an individual takes on for themselves, or whether they're working with a professional in order to do that. I think it's a worthwhile exercise and something I would encourage all of your listeners to do.
yep, absolutely. Well, that's fantastic, Dan. What have we missed here?
Uh, I need it to be warmer. I do. I just do. Like
Right.
going outside right now is terrible. What have we missed? I don't know. You know, dream big things, but keep your feet on the ground, right? Keep your feet on the ground. Do the thing that is right in front of you, and you know, settle in and be patient and take pride in the fact that you consistently do things that fulfill you and hopefully help you live the longest and healthiest and most vibrant and most authentic life you can.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, you're doing something that other people can't. This is your own personal journey And you're the only one who can change it. You're the only one who can
Yeah.
improve upon it. So
Yeah.
think of it as like, hey, this is something nobody else can do.
Yeah.
Nobody else can work with this body like I have.
That's it. You are, without question, you are the hero of your story. No
Yeah,
doubt.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dan, this has been fantastic. It's always great to start the year off chatting with you here to get
Thanks,
people
Bill.
fired up a little bit, and hopefully they can find a warmer place to do it too.
That would be great. Yeah. Wherever all of your listeners are, I hope they are slightly warmer than this.
Yeah, right. That's good.
For
Well,
sure. For
if
sure.
people want to work with you or find out more about Dan Herman Performance, where should they be looking?
Instagram's probably the best place. DMs are open for spam and all sorts of other crap. But Dan Herman Performance on Instagram is probably the best place to get me. I do respond to messages. I have gotten messages in the past from listeners, just you know, in terms of support or questions about this or that or the other thing. I welcome all of it. I respond to everything that I get. I'm certainly happy to help if I can, and if I can't, I'll tell you, and I'll try to guide you in the best direction possible.
Yeah, no, I know you are quite responsive, which is great. And if people want to work with you, do they need to be in what town in New Jersey are you in again?
Right in the middle of New Jersey, Montgomery, so about say 15 minutes from Princeton.
Gotcha.
But
Uh,
as it relates to what I've been working on a lot lately, still a lot of in-person, hands-on type of work, some virtual coaching as well, in terms of programming, whether it's strength training, mobility, whatever that is, but also a lot of one-on-one work in a similar space to this as it relates to behavior change. Creating that structure and just really helping people put practices in place that set them up for success.
yeah, no, you are an awesome person to be able to work with. Yeah, I'm sure remotely as well. I mean, you've got it dialed in, which is fantastic. So
Bill,
hopefully
you're
some
kind.
people.
I appreciate the chance to sit here and talk with you. It's always great to catch up.
Yeah, I wish you'd said you were closer to Trenton rather than use that word Princeton. I mean, the previous episode was a guy who I interviewed for Penn. The
Mhm.
Penn are the good guys, Princeton are the bad guys.
Strangely enough, like Trenton is probably, if I had to guess, 25 minutes from me. So it's
Yeah,
not that much further. And by the way, if I pass Trenton, then I'm on my way to Philadelphia. So
true,
it's
true.
not a bad thing.
Well, we'll see what the Eagles do coming up, right?
I'm not even talking about
Okay.
it.
Fair enough. Well, hey, Dan, thank you so much for your time here. Well, we can talk sports offline if we want, but it's always a pleasure and great to reconnect with you, brother.
Thank you, Bill. Always a pleasure.